Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and once again, I'm delighted to be joined by Natasha Meikle, Laura Bradburn, Lawrence Connolly, and Russell Boyce. Russell, first things first.
Yes, mate.
Talk us through the jacket.
I'm on the Fran Alonso bus now, mate. I love his passion. I love his style. He's got it going on. He does this all the time, man. I love it. So I recognised his blazer. I thought, I've got a similar number to that, so I'm going to don it in his honour. This one for Fran Alonso tonight, man. And an outstanding comeback second half. And just how refreshing it was to see a manager on the side showing that emotion, who genuinely cares and seems to have a connection with his whole backroom team. I'm watching him right now, hugging folk left, right and centre. It's brilliant.
It's great to see.
Absolutely. It's
great to see. I mean, you potentially were the only person of this group who could have gone into their wardrobe and pulled out a white jacket, Russell. So you're going to have to tell us a story behind the jacket.
I genuinely just thought it looked cool, so I bought it up. That was it. It was me. I know folk think it's like stuff I wear. It's like, oh, was that for like a set occasion? Was that a fancy dress party? I'm like, aye.
Oh, is that electrical tape in the lapels?
Is it what?
Is that electrical tape?
It looks like it's been fraying and you've just tried to fix it.
Fight the fray. Now, one thing I would say is, right, I went to my first Celtic game in 1987. I have never, to this day, had a player's name on the back of my jersey, but if I do decide to get a player's name on the back of my jersey, it's going to have to be Teagarden. What a performance again. Natasha, she is the star player of the Celtic side.
Oh, she is. She's unreal, isn't she? And it shows what a massive loss she's been while she's been out, but also testament how good a player she is, that she can come back from such a long injury and be just that good. I mean, what a difference she made. She's just, to me, you know, the team played well, a few good performances in the second half, but for me, Teagarden is head and shoulders above anyone else on that pitch today. Her technical ability, how good she is on the ball, how good she is off the ball, her ball control, her passing, her movement. She's got it all, really. Absolutely brilliant performance, and hopefully going to be a really important player for us in this run-in of games.
You know, I've got to confess, I've only recently got on this bus. You know, I'm not one of these people who are saying I have been following the Celtic women's team avidly for the last couple of years. I'm late to the party here, but I'm glad that I have started watching the games. Russell, you've been speaking about Fran Alonso's passion, which is it's infectious. And then you look at the star player for me, Sarah Teagarden, and there's various other things in there that quite quickly you start to get hooked on. And I'm not just saying this because we are going to be covering as many games as we can, but I'm really enjoying the fact that we're tuning in to the women's game. My only concern is, Laura, and I'll throw this one over to yourself, are we going to be in the same scenario where somebody like Teagarden comes in as a standout, and there's going to be English clubs circling K Park or Celtic Park to try and maybe swoop in? What is the situation in terms of transfers? Are we in the realms of big transfer fees in the women's games here?
Not that I'm aware of, but I would be less. The English game is growing, but I would be less concerned about that and more concerned about the French game. The French women's teams are really strong. Lyon have been pretty dominant in the Women's Champions League. I think Paris Saint-Germain have now got a team as well, so it's slightly different to what you would expect from what the men's game is. But I certainly think there's a concern that should be there amongst all the Scottish teams, that there are teams in other parts of Europe and America especially who put loads more money into the women's game and could attract these players onto. You know, if obviously the Celtic players are already on full-time contracts, but for other players in the league, full-time contracts are available elsewhere and might be more lucrative for them going forward.
We sat at half-time, Lawrence Connolly. Disappointing first half. We looked at the park. We looked at the fact that they might have been quite leggy. I think obviously the introduction to Teagarden was a massive part of the improvement of the performance. But what did they do differently in the second half, do you feel, that turned that game around?
Listen, I think Mariah Lee getting a wee bit more of the ball, perhaps being professional, will have start to tire against this. But definitely Teagarden coming in, and we did sign her from France. So, you know, she is an experienced player. Definitely missed this season. But I think we moved the ball a bit quicker. You know, both Jacinta and Mariah Lee saw a bit more of it and really just started shooting from a bit closer in rather than from distance. I think first half most of their shots were from distance and seemed to be easy for the Hibs keeper to deal with.
Now, I'm going to run through some of these comments because it's great for people to get involved in the ACSOM Bulletin at the best of times, but obviously during the performances that we're watching, the women's game, it's great that people are getting involved. And Gillian Gallagher did say 3-1 before the game, and again at half-time. Well done to our women's team, hail, hail. And Francie Dobellieu, good win, what a difference with Teagarden on. She is going to have a host of fans, and Gillian is appreciating the style icon that is Russell Boyce. Again, Plixie Plocks comes in to say on the hoops. And from Facebook, great second half. Celtic were much better. Gillian goes on to tell us that Teagarden is solid and so flexible and mobile. Fab technical ability on the ball. She's just she's so confident on the ball, and there is further information coming in about who I think is a star player. She's getting married to Ian Harkes this summer, so as long as he's in Scotland, she'll go nowhere. Well, that's an interesting one as well.
Yeah, that was part of us bringing her over here, is that she wanted to come to Scotland because he'd already come to Dundee United. So at the time, would we have got her otherwise? Perhaps not, but she did want the move to Scotland. He's obviously from America as well. She wanted to move to Scotland to come over and join him. So maybe we'll have to watch out for him moving to another club. That might give us an indication of where she goes next. Or perhaps her moving to another club will give us an indication of where he goes next. We'll see, but I do think they'll probably come as a bit of a double act.
When I seen the name Ian Harkes and the fact he was American, Natasha, it took me back to John Harkes, who had a fantastic career both at international level and down south. And interestingly enough, he came to Celtic on trial before he signed for Sheffield Wednesday, and the transfer fee was something in the region of £90,000 that Celtic quibbled over, and Harkes went down south, and he was down there, Lawrence, for about 15 years, multi-caps, went into football management, and when I seen the name Ian Harkes, that's the first person that came to my mind. But it's great that people are getting involved in Skinhead Soul Boy.
Are
they related?
I think it's his dad.
Brilliant. There's a great connection. Great connection to John Harkes, who could have played for Celtic in the early 90s.
Same with Brad Friedel, mate. Another States player was on trial. I think we had Friedel, Shea Given.
Yeah. And we kept Stuart Kerr, who at that time was highly, highly rated at that age. Skinhead Soul Boy, much better in the second half. Does Teagarden have a brother? The men's team need to watch what the women are doing. Really enjoyed that game. It was a really enjoyable second half performance, certainly, Natasha.
It was, yeah. I think we were all a bit concerned after the first half. It just seemed a bit sluggish. Came to their own a lot more in the second half. And the one thing I think that the men could take from the women's game is just that desire. You know, those girls obviously were aware that the first half performance hadn't been what it needed to be, and whatever Fran Alonso did or said at half time really spurred them on in the second half, because look, they came absolutely flying out the traps in that second half, got those 2 goals pretty quickly, and from there we never looked back. We never looked really too uncomfortable. I know Hibs had a couple of chances, but from the second half I thought we were very in control, very comfortable, and it just shows what that bit of commitment and desire to get back into a game can do. And it speaks to their character. 2 games in a row now. You know, we look at the Rangers game, under the cosh for a lot of the game, really riding our luck, took our chance when it came and got the victory at the end. That spoke to the character, the mentality of the team. And again, you know, today, you know, lucky, you know, to get a goal at the end of the first half to go in 1-1, really not playing our best, and to come back from being a goal down to win the game 3-1 and be so confident and comfortable in the second half, again speaks to the mentality and the character of that dressing room. And that is something that I think the men's team could learn from. And how can the women not have that drive and passion when you look at Fran Alonso on the side of the park? He's animated, he's passionate, he's encouraging them, and that really transfers onto the park for me, for the girls. And again, something the men's team could learn from.
100%.
Obviously doesn't care what anybody else thinks wearing jackets like that, Russell?
Neither does Fran Alonso.
It's a nice place to be when you don't care. It's brilliant. I'm telling you, it's liberating.
It's brilliant that Gillian is getting involved in the bulletin tonight. I do like Mariah Lee too, even though her first half wasn't great. I like the way she, as well as others, can run and go past players. She has good, skillful technical ability. I was going to say that because I thought she was poor in the first half. We put some of that down to the pitch. But what I was really surprised at is that we got her name right and the BBC Alba commentator got it wrong because they were calling her Maria Lee throughout the first half and half of the second half. I just thought it was kind of obvious with Mariah Carey, but there you are. But Gillian, thank you very much for that. Who else? You laughing because you looked over your corner of your shoulder at your Mariah Carey record collection there, Laura.
Record collection,
yeah. Who else impressed you tonight? We've gone on about Sarah Tiergarden. Who else impressed you, Laura?
I think Craig is really good. She's captain, I think, and is sort of the engine of the team. Certainly puts a lot in, a bit more of a physical presence than some of the other players, and seems to be the kind of anchor for the team. So she was another one that stood out for me.
Jacinta Galaba-Darichichi was obviously good when she had the ball. Chloe Warrington, ex-Trinity High School pupil, come right through the academy. I think she showed, up well again after a performance against Rangers. And Lisa Robertson was showing a lot of experience. See when she taken it at Hibs player out early on second half, you're like, she's done it all, hasn't she?
Smart.
Down at Durham, with Glasgow City, she's been over in the States. I think Lisa definitely kind of brings a lot of experience to the team.
The other player I was going to highlight, there's another couple of names I'm going to get through here, but I thought that when she came on, Tegan Bowie played particularly well. She seems to have pace to burn, and I was looking at the fact that there's been quite a few, going back to a discussion we just had, Laura, quite a few English clubs interested in taking her down, Arsenal being one of them, taking her down south, but she's up here, she's a Celtic supporter, I hope, and I thought she was very good. She's only 17. I thought she was very impressive, and one of the reasons why I think she opened it up a wee bit for Mariah Lee as well in the second half. But one thing I'm going to have to say, and this is going back, Russell, to our previous game on Wednesday night. Sarah Ewens, right, when she scored tonight, she seemed to put her hands up to her ears, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was in response to the criticism you gave her on Wednesday night. Have you got anything to say about that, Russell Boyce?
Yeah, I was going to bring it up in fairness because you've got to give praise when praise is due, and whilst I didn't think she had a particularly good game, in what was a thankless task, which I also did say on Wednesday as well, that it was when we were under the cosh for much of it. I just felt it was too many one-touch attempts at layoffs and things that she was doing rather than holding the ball up and giving the team time to get up the park. I didn't think her first display was a million miles away from Wednesday, to be honest, but I thought the goal was outstanding. I love the way that she spun off a player, and the finish was, there wasn't much room of the goal to be aiming for there, and she did it absolutely superbly. So yes, credit when it's due, and 100%. If that's obviously, I'm only going from one match that I've seen. I'm well aware that she's obviously our number one striker. I believe the top scorer in the team as well right now. So it's it was one game. It didn't go particularly well. I'm here to call that, and then I thought today I'm full of praise for that second half display, especially, and I thought the goal was taken expertly. So fair play to her.
You're cacking yourself, Russell. You're cacking yourself.
I've seen that goal described as Larson-esque finish by Pat Turner on Twitter.
I've seen that on Twitter, yeah.
It's hard to disagree, isn't it?
Larson-esque. Natasha, I'm going to throw this one over to yourself. Hypo 543, sad state of affairs. 9 in a row, quadruple treble winners. Podcast excited about women's football. And the Scottish Cup quarter-finals are on. Shame, but Celtic are where they are. Now, this is what the women's game is going to be up against, I believe, for some time. Natasha, what would you say to Hypo 543?
Okay, we are a Celtic channel. We focus on Celtic Football Club, and we are interested and excited about people playing for Celtic and games that Celtic play in. That is regardless of gender. We know that Celtic aren't playing in the Scottish Cup games this weekend. We're not going to cover that. We're going to get excited about a league and a team where it's still all to play for. When the last time Celtic men's team excited any of us, I don't know. But that is talking about a team who have nothing left to play for, a league that is finished. So sorry if we can't get our excitement up for that. Whereas on the other hand, we have Celtic players, women, playing in a team with commitment and passion, going for a league title that is still all open, all to play for, and are convincingly winning games, playing good football along the way. I have absolutely no idea why, as a Celtic fan media channel, we wouldn't get excited about that. No idea.
No, I agree with that.
To be fair, it's not like we aren't covering like the men's side of things almost on a daily basis as well. Anyway, this is a supplement to that. Do you know what I mean? I think it's something that should be embraced. I don't understand. Like, we'll definitely be back Monday to Friday next week doing an hour's coverage of the men's team that, rightfully, you point out, aren't exciting us and aren't really giving us anything on the pitch to talk about. We've got a meaningful game there today. 5 of us are on talking about it. That's a good thing for Celtic, and as I say, it should be embraced. Not, you know, I mean, look at the white blazer, mate. You know, we're all excited by this, man.
Russell is all in.
Calm down, mate. Calm down.
You are all in, and Anthony Patrick Aiken, Russell Alonso, like the ring to that. And he also goes on, pure class Niebuhr. Now, I'm not sure if in your part of the world the word Niebuhr is used, Russell, but it doesn't mean neighbour. All right, just in case, because just so that you know, Liam Cross comes in to say via YouTube, Kiva Keenan is without doubt the best right back at the club. Take note, JJ Kenny. Now, one of the points that was made there, it's Scottish Cup weekend, and yes, I would love if Celtic men's team were involved in that, and if they were involved in it, as Russell quite rightly says, we would have covered that game as well as tonight's game as well. But we got word, Laura, that Dundee United obliterated the challenge of Aberdeen, something we couldn't do in the last game. When you start seeing that, and it's a concern that I've raised a couple of times on the podcast over the last week or so, I do believe that there is going to be other teams who get their act in together for the new season. One of those teams, I would guess, is going to be Hibs. I thought Aberdeen might have been another team that could be pushing next season, but obviously there's a big job there for Stephen Glass yet to do. Does that concern you when you see that other Scottish teams seem to be pulling things together and we're still managerless, rudderless?
It doesn't concern me. It does make me think that perhaps, it's been levelled at Celtic supporters this season that we are an entitled bunch, and perhaps it's not us that's been the entitled bunch. What's been proven is the minute that Celtic and Rangers drew each other in the Scottish Cup, every other team in the tournament sort of bucked up their ideas because they knew, well, there's one less of them that we have to go over. Celtic and Rangers being on opposite sides of the draw going into the final means that it's probably going to be them in the final. So the minute one of them's out, everybody else sort of thinks, well, we've got a chance to go pretty far here, and then if we get Rangers in the final, then we've got anything can happen on a one-off match. So perhaps what it just shows is that our team, as we suspected, don't care as much and are perhaps in a way used to winning in a way that the other teams are not, and so they can find that motivation, and we've only provided them with more by going out of the tournament.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. And, we will be talking about some other aspects of the Celtic men's team as well as the broadcast goes on. Hasboy 1888, I am loving watching a women's game with my girls. It's great actually getting them into Celtic and how good they really are. We mentioned that last week, Natasha. It's something that your girls can aspire to. It's not just about your boys. And I know that when I started going as a season ticket holder, back in the kind of mid-90s, you've seen very few women at the game. So, I think it's gone full circle. And for me, when you look at the social aspect of people in sport, it can only be a good thing that the women's game is continuing to develop and grow.
100%. If we want the women's game to develop and grow like we've talked about, which we all do, then we need to have more visibility. And the only way for visibility is for mainstream media channels to show the games, and for even for channels like us to talk about it, make it more visible, because only then will you have young girls looking at it and saying, oh, I can do that. You don't aspire to be something you can't see. So if they can't see female professional footballers, when are they going, or how are they going to aspire to be that? If they can see women playing for Celtic as a full-time job, they'll sit there and think, I can do that. That can be me. That encourages and increases participation, and then the game grows. We need the funding to make sure that everyone who wants to participate has the opportunity to participate. We need the funding to make sure the visibility increases. So all these things are cogs in, a big, wider operation. But first things first, visibility, get it out there, let it be seen, and have, like that comment just said, have young girls watching the game and get excited about seeing girls play for Celtic. It's so important, and I can only hope that going forward, channels like BBC Alba and even Celtic TV start making the games more accessible.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, we had a guest in here earlier on for a different podcast who was commentating on this game. So I don't know in terms of the footage where that will be, Natasha. So Celtic obviously are going to be, I think, pushing it as much as they possibly can. And Hasboy comes back in. Celtic State of Mind must be a lucky charm for the ladies. Well, I hope it is, because we're going to continue to push the game, the women's game, for Celtic. Skinhead Soulboy. The men's team, this is a good point. The men's team wouldn't have had the fight to go in at one each, then come out and blow Hibs away. I'm proud of the women. They have given us something to cheer after a dismal season for the men. Now, there is an element of the fortune in that, Natasha, absolutely, because I think that when we look at some of the comparisons, that passion that Russell was talking about in Fran Alonso, there was a wee bit of needle, that's it. There was a wee bit of needle between a couple of the players, but you don't see much of that. There is very little in the way of injury time because there's very little play acting, I've noticed. There's a lot of tiny wee things in the game that I think, over time, the men's game have got caught up in that side of it. And again, when you get to the realisation, Lauren, I'll come to you on this one, when Celtic players haven't been trying as hard as they should, or they don't want to be at the club, and it's been confirmed obviously by Neil Lennon earlier in the season, and confirmed by the players with their performances. And then all you see when you watch the women's game is a team of players who want to win a game for their club. It's almost as though it's not been sullied yet, and I hope it never is.
Yeah, I think what we've seen with all the chat about the European Super League this week, one of the things that we pride ourselves on in the game in Scotland anyway is that even with the men's team, it doesn't seem to have been quite as commercialised and quite as diluted in terms of its intensity as maybe the English League or some of the other leagues. But like you say, when you then compare that to the women's game that is playing with a lot less funding and a lot less hype around it and things like that, you can see the purity of the game and the fact that, more often than not, we referenced Neil Lennon talking about professional pride before he left the club. You can see that, that is the main reason a lot of the women's team are playing is professional pride. They're certainly not doing it for finances that are going to change their life in any way or anything like it. So they're playing it for the love of the game, and you can tell that. And just to back up on what Natasha said about, or what one of the listeners said about girls being able to watch it and things like that. I'm of an age where I played football with my brothers until I got to the age where, my brother, who's 8 years older than me, overhead kicked a ball into my face, and I thought, this is not for me anymore. But, it got to a dead end where you saw the odd girl on a boys' team up until about age 12 or 13, and then obviously for physical reasons, like they couldn't keep up with the boys as they got bigger and stronger and things like that. So the fact that there's obviously an infrastructure getting put in place where girls can play football from a young age right up through the ranks, the same as the boys, and hopefully aspire to professionalism is something to look forward to. And that's without going into, I can see some people's criticism of the women's game in terms of the standard of it and things like that. It's not as high as the men's game. Nobody's expecting it to be at this early stage in the development. But, for girls that want to play football, there's surely got to be an option there for them to progress with that, and this gives them that opportunity. Yeah,
definitely. Now, Hypo came up with a slightly controversial comment earlier, but he has followed it up with a couple of other comments to say women's game is good. I watch women's football. If you're a football fan, then all levels are good to watch, and I would agree with that. And he or she goes on to say, it's just that Glasgow have been winning the league with ease, but a challenge from Celtic and Rangers have made it better. It certainly does add a bit of interest, because when you look at Scottish football as a whole, Lawrence, it's always been, Celtic. There was a Celtic and Rangers. There was a small period in the 80s. Before then, you would need to go right back to, the 1950s, and you're talking about great Hearts and Kilmarnock and Hibs sides. So the duopoly has always been there for Scottish football. And I think what makes this interesting is we've got a third club in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think City may turn out to be the Queen's Park over there. Queen's Park was a big club when Celtic were first founded, and for a while, it was Celtic Queen's Park, and then Rangers got a bit better, then it was eventually developed into Celtic Rangers, and then, as you said, the 50s it was a bit more spread about. The 80s you had the birth of the new firm, Jim McLean's Dundee United, Alex Ferguson's Aberdeen, which died away. Then it was Celtic Rangers. Rangers died, so I suppose the new firm then becomes the old firm. Now we've got the Rangers, and it's the Glasgow Derby. So yeah, I can see perhaps.
Lawrence.
He doesn't miss a chance. Give him that.
Honestly, it was going so well. Gillian, I've got to say thank you so much for your support during the bulletins this evening. It's great to have you on board. You're watching it on YouTube. Well said, Natasha. Now bring on Line of Duty to top off a good sunny Sunday. Just a big shout out to Vicky McClure, who's obviously the fiancée of Johnny Owens, who has informed us at a Celtic State of Mind that she is a mad Celtic fan now, and I think a lot of that's down to Johnny and also Martin Compston. So it's great that they're spreading the word. A couple of wee issues or topics to cover as well. Ryan Christie's contract, Natasha. He will be free to speak to other clubs this summer. What do you make of that?
Look, Ryan Christie has divided opinion all season. A lot of people will be happy to see the back of him. A lot of people think that he could, come back to be a key player under new management. Regardless of what position we're taking on that, the fact that his deal has been allowed to run down is the serious concern for me. That's just terrible business. Ryan Christie is an asset that could go for a reasonable sum of money, but not if we're letting his contract run down and expire. That's going to, really limit what we can bring in for him, if anything. Mm-hmm. So regardless if you like Ryan Christie, don't like Ryan Christie, want to keep him, don't want to keep him, the fact that we've let this contract run down is just ridiculous and symptomatic of the bad business Celtic seem to be doing in the transfer market at the moment.
Yeah, Peter Lawwell should have had a spreadsheet saying his contract's up then, so the danger period is 2 years in from that. We need to look at it. Can we re-sign or moving them on? How it gets this late in the day?
What's with the December thing as well, Lawrence? What's the contract ending in December for? Why? Because the thing is as well, surely it sticks out more like a sore thumb in his case than any, because his contract is such a unique end date from what everyone else in the squad will be. So even if you've got that spreadsheet, his should have been so much more noticeable than anyone else's. And why they've done that in the first place, I don't understand. I wouldn't mind when he leaves anyway. I think that ship sailed. But I certainly think, December end dates of contracts really sums up the sort of crazy sort of way we've been dealing with both our recruitment and our retaining of players in the past sort of 18 to 24 months. It's just utterly bizarre.
It's complacency again, isn't it, Russell? When you say you wonder about the spreadsheets, maybe in the same drawer as all those CVs when Neil Lennon was given a job first time round. But here's something quite interesting, and I'm trying to, in my head, because I've lost a year somewhere along the line, think of when this was. Let's say it was about 18 months to maybe 2 years ago, and I was doing one of these Q&As, and it was actually up in Inverness. So it would have been, I think, John Hartson, and I was doing a Q&A with John Hartson up there. And someone very prominent from Inverness was at the event, and he had his club blazer on, etc., join up the dots, and he was asking me, it must have been around about Christmas time actually, he was asking if he felt that Celtic might offload Ryan Christie in January because Inverness had a 15% sell-on clause in the contract. And I says, I don't think they'll be in any hurry because he was in good form back then. And then the conversation, and bear in mind, this is someone who is in a Scottish football boardroom. It's not just a fan who's throwing figures around. He asked, how much do you think Celtic would get for Ryan Christie at that time? And, you know, I wasn't going to give these incredible figures that you see sometimes in newspapers, etc. I says, well, maybe between 8 and 12. And he was thinking, well, I was hoping for more 15 because he was trying to do his own sums for Inverness Cali. Fast forward, Laura, we're going to lose a player for nothing. I mean, how frustrating is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, at any point, even at his best playing, going for 15 million would have been a stretch anyway. But like you say, it's just bad business that that you let it run down, especially if you're not getting the best out of him while he's still here. You know, there was an argument with the way that Henrik Larsson left the club, and I know this is going back, but, you know, people didn't really mind the way that worked out, because from minute one until the minute he left the club, he was one of our best players, if not, well, by far our best player. So you didn't really mind that, okay, we're not getting as much for him financially, but we're using him to the full extent of his contract until he leaves. Ryan Christie hasn't really been worth his salt this season, so you like to think if we had sold him at the start of this season with 18 months, with like a year left in his contract or whatever, then it would have been worth it, not only from the point of view of getting financial reward for it, but also not having a player in the team who's not pulling his weight.
I'm not having 3 number 10s in the park.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
has been a big issue now. Tonight has been very enjoyable. Russell has added a bit of spice to that. Thank you very much, Russell. You've got a new bus to be driving, I think. Lawrence, very impressed with...
Spices added.
Old Spice, yeah. Very impressed with Lawrence's pronunciation of Jacinta's surname. And just for all the comments from Natasha and Laura, absolutely superb. It's been a very enjoyable few broadcasts this evening. So thank you everybody for getting involved on Twitter, Facebook and on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed already, please do that, because we're building the channel. And as Russell said earlier on, we're on every day. We're on every single day. So get involved. But all that's left for me to say is thank you all for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.